Hello once again from the Bled Strategic Forum at this magnificent location in Slovenia, Lake Bled. And I'm returning to you just to share with you the outcome and what was said in the session which I chaired on the negotiations for a peace in Ukraine. Are there any prospects at all? The answers and the outcome and the reflections from the panel are all deeply bleak. So we have a variety of ideas and a variety of perspectives, but the overall question is about Ukraine. Are we on a long road to peace?
I mean, when we look at Russia, because that is the problem. It's not Ukraine that is the problem. Russia is our problem and will remain our problem, because the indicators that we see in Russia, whether that's politics, economy, military, religion, private sector, media, and so on and so forth, is very much oriented towards war. There's nothing else that we are seeing. And for that purpose, and analyzing from that angle, quite clearly Russia is and will remain the threat. So until that situation is changed, there will be some difficulties getting to peace. But saying that peace is off the table, no, I'm not saying that. And as we have seen from the past, things change.
Alexander, let me come to you. As Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs for Ukraine, and that challenge that you laid down, and your office laid down very clearly, we need a frank discussion about all of this. What factors are holding back our collective action and efforts?
If we will give Ukraine what we have now, possibility, not considering that we have limited plan. For example, each country has their own plan of defense, and they preparing for aggression and take it, carry out, not give Ukraine because it's limited through their plan. But questions is, what is the battle line in Ukraine? Is it Ukrainian front or front of whole European community?
But let me keep pressing you. What is missing? What is the frankness which is missing at the moment, which you want to highlight?
I want to spread information that if we will gather it all of our possibility, all of our efforts, and focus it for defeating Putin in the field of battle, we will win.
Right, let me go to Turkey, because we need a reality check. There is a process which is underway intermittently in your country, contacts at least. Give us an update on how that is going and what you take away about whether there is any willingness to talk in language which could lead to peace when it comes to exchanges of prisoners and other things which are being negotiated in that process. What is the mood in the contacts there?
Despite some significant achievements in the humanitarian track, as you pointed out, exchange of, prisoners, and also some very good discussion about the kidnapped children, these 3 rounds of talks in Istanbul, the latest round of talks, have not yet yielded any considerable progress regarding ceasefire or peace. Ukraine rightly, of course, insisted on having a ceasefire first to allow room for real, healthy, meaningful negotiations, whereas Russia claimed that, it is possible, it's even necessary to first agree on the basic parameters of a peace agreement before any ceasefire. So there is this gap, irrespective of the substance of the talks. I understand the frustration given the increasing Russian aerial attacks on major Ukrainian cities with unacceptable, intolerable collateral damage. But there is no alternative rather than unrelentingly seeking peace. Because as we see it, there is hardly any possibility for a quick military victory on the battlefield, and there is hardly any possibility for a third country to come and impose a peace deal from outside. So I think it's up to Ukraine and Russia to get together, address those sensitive and difficult issues, and reach a negotiated settlement.
You were at the Copenhagen meeting, as with the other foreign ministers in this room. What was your impression, and what did you take away? What did you take back to Brussels from that meeting about the intentions and the commitment, and whether we should be talking about peace, however you want to define it?
You remember some of the skepticism before the NATO summit. You remember some of our discussions like this. I think that the NATO summit really provided us with a clear image of transatlantic unity and action. And what happened after the summit was that words were not just declarations. Just 2 weeks after the summit, we have had yet another meeting with the US president, which actually paved the way for this priority list for Ukraine on key military equipment, especially air defense and munition, to support Ukraine in this unprecedented attack on civilian and infrastructure. Strength and unity was the goal of the summit, and this is what we delivered. But although, as we say, the alliance remains to be a defensive one, it is clear that without this strength, without the capability targets, without supporting Ukraine, this will be a paper tiger.
So, Rafael Grossi, let me come to you next about atomic energy, nuclear energy. What is your assessment of how close to the cliff of real danger we are with Zaporizhzhia, with Chernobyl, and so on?
Chernobyl, which they subsequently left. But the dangers did not stop there. As you are mentioning, in February this year, a number of attacks on the sarcophagus, on the new safety containment, have compromised this of course, indispensable factor for security and for nuclear security and safety in the whole of Europe.
But what is your experience? Is it a dialogue of the deaf when it comes to you raising the alarm and saying, do you realize what will happen if you continue to do this?
Well, I think a way to answer your question, Nick, would be that we have been able to avoid the worst so far.
Through productive contacts or not?
Of course, direct contact. It's the only way. You know, I will say something very sincerely here. On occasion, many occasions, I've been personally criticized for engaging with, I've seen Putin more than once, President Putin, apart from all the others. And I have always said, if I don't talk to him, who do I talk to about the situation that they have created? How do I engage? And it's something I've discussed with your president many, many times, and I think it's essential when it comes to diplomacy, Ambassador. This is our job, to reach out.
So for the moment, thank you. Bill, let me come to you. For the last 20 years, you've been declared a threat to Russian national security. You have a very clear idea about the Russians. What should we be understanding about the way they negotiate?
Ukraine is defending, he's attacking. And so all this talk about peace negotiations, there's only one party to talk to, and that's Vladimir Putin. And if he doesn't back down, and I know he's not going to back down, because if he does back down, he looks weak. If he looks weak, he loses power. If he loses power, he dies.
Do you believe he understands the principle of peace, mir?
The only way that there is going to be peace if he's forced to be in a position. And how do you force him? And some of the things we just talked about forces him, which is if you give the Ukrainians the weapons they need, they can defend themselves. There's another thing which we can do, which is we can deprive Putin of money. And how do we do that? Donald Trump talked about it for several days before the Alaska summit. If he actually had followed through and imposed secondary sanctions on the buyers of Russian oil, on China, India, and Turkey, they wouldn't buy any more Russian oil.
Do you mean end the war or stop hostilities?
I mean, usually all the wars, before there is a peace agreement, stop with the ceasefire or stopping with hostilities or whatever. Here we have the strange demand of Mr. Putin to end the war with peace agreement without ceasefire. How does that work? You know how it's usually called, that situation? Capitulation. I was in a war in Slovenia. First we achieved ceasefire with Yugoslav army, and then we went to negotiate on Brioni Island with them. The same with Croatia to end the Croatian war. And when the Croatian war stopped, there was still part of Croatia, Posavina, that was 10 years under the protectorate of United Nations. So what we were trying to do with Putin was to have a ceasefire, to stop the killings on the ground, and to continue the war with diplomatic means instead of arms.